Welcome everyone to another edition of Easing the Reader, a Wheel of Time reread podcast. My name is Chris Mary Hultman, with me, as always, David Green, trying to hold up his Dragon Reborn book. And today we have a very special guest, the only Wheel of Time person that I follow on social media, Katy Sedai. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I would be lying if I didn't say that I was excited too.
Yeah, I'm so flattered that I am the only person that you follow. That is just incredible, and that means I have to, keep on top of my news so that you can stay on top of everything that's happening.
Because they would always say that. He'd say like, "Hey, did you check this out?" And it's just like, "Yeah, Katy Sedai already. Yeah, I'm up on that."
Nearly every single episode we talk about something, because we're like, "Yeah, Katy Sedai tweeted this, so I saw it," and it's like, "Oh, that's it's great that she keeps up with all of the news, really."
Yeah.
We were on the Dusty Wheel for the trailer reaction the other day, so I thought, well, this is the perfect in that I have to ask you to come onto the show because Chris will be delighted.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, everyone was on the Dusty Wheel pretty much on the trailer release. It was an incredible day.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, was it two lots of 6-hour streams that you did in the end?
Yeah, they did 2 6-hour streams. I did not even catch it all because it was a lot.
And this was only for a teaser as well, which is like, just imagine when the full trailer and then the 3 episodes on the one day.
I know, once we actually have all of the hours of television, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. It's going to be crazy.
It was interesting that it was a teaser because, I mean, it was still like 2 minutes and some change. And in my world, that's not really a teaser. That is more of a trailer, really.
We'll talk more about. We can talk about like the teaser and stuff and get really into it. But it's only 2 minutes of 8 hours of TV. So
I get that, but usually a trailer isn't more than 2-3 hours, even for So.
Here's a 3-hour trailer.
But yeah, no. So Katy, how did you first get into Wheel of Time?
Yeah, so I just had I think it was like a 12th birthday, and my aunt and uncle gave me the first half of the Wheel of Time. So back in like 2001, they divided up the Wheel of Time into a young adult version. And so it was like From the Two Rivers and To the Blight. And so I got the first half of Eye of the World, and it included a prologue, the earlier prologue from Egwene's perspective. And like within 3 paragraphs, I fell in love with the world and with everything Wheel of Time. And so then I just started reading, and I read through as many books as existed at the time. And then every time a new book would come out, I would reread. So these books have been a part of my life for a very long time. And, I was one of those like closet nerds who read epic fantasy, but didn't really talk about it until the show came out. And I was like, you know what? I want to talk about this because there's a great community out there. And more people need to know that it's okay to read epic fantasy and that this is a great story.
Yeah, definitely. It is a great community. I was like, I got into Wheel of Time around the same time as you did. It's about 2000. It was just after Crossroads with Twilight came out.
Okay.
Because there was a big marketing push for it. So I remember when they split the books. I remember that happening. And I was like, I went into the bookstore that morning to read the new prologue. I was like, I'm going to read.
Oh, yeah.
I was like kind of just looking around, making sure no one was kind of like seeing if I was stealing or something. I was like reading this prologue. But I found like Fairyland then pretty much quick.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But I never commented. I never got involved. I just used to just lurk. I was very much. Yeah. That is very much my personality.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. See, I found Dragon Mount, and especially when the theories started. I didn't really get into Theoryland as much. I think that was just maybe too metaphysical for me. But Dragon Mount and the news, and especially when Robert Jordan was sick, I would definitely go in and check on his blog and everything to see, what was happening, and the news, once the news came out that Brandon Sanderson was finishing it, and just kind of following along. Yeah.
I mean, the whole splitting of the books is interesting because that's always how they've been here in Sweden. I mean, I remember.
Oh, okay.
Because I moved back, been back and forth in the States and Sweden, and I mean, I remember here in Sweden we have every February they have something that's called like the book sale, where all the bookstores like sell out like books dirt cheap just to kind of like get in new stuff, and it's just a great way to get your hands on some classic books for a fraction of the cost. And they usually have the Lord of the Rings, the Swedish editions, in like a big set, and then they with Silmarillion, and then they'll have Tolkien's like interpretation of Scandinavian folklore, because he did a series of books about that too.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so they'll have that. Then they'll have they'd always have Stephen Donaldson's Thomas Covenant. The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant was also like one of those fantasy stuff that they'd always have. And then they would have some of Wheel of Time, and they were always divided into two books. I think to keep down printing costs.
Yeah, I mean they're big books.
Yeah, and also I think so that people didn't have to wait so long to get them translated into Swedish.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And as I told Dave early on, it's in Sweden it's called The Tale of the Dragon's Return is the name of the series. It's not called The Wheel of Time.
Interesting.
Yeah, it kind of misses the whole larger scope of the thing.
Yeah.
Really, the Tale of the Dragons. It gets right down to what it's sort of the core of it, but the Wheel of Time is quite important to everything else going on.
Yeah. Up to the tale of the Dragon's Return, even, right? Yeah. Like it's the mechanism that allows it to happen.
Yeah. And it was kind of the main, when we get talking about the trailer in a little bit, it was kind of the main focus of the trailer as well, was all the different wheel motifs that were in each shot and that kind of thing. But before we do go on, so if you are with us for the first time and you're watching us for the first time, please do subscribe to the channel. All of Katy's information will be below as well. But we're also doing a competition that when we get to when we hit, because we're only kind of new on YouTube, so once we hit 100 subscribers, we'll be doing a giveaway of this book, which is by me. On here. Can we get it on? There,
it doesn't want to.
Oh, I had it and then I lost it again.
You got to breathe on it. There you go.
Oh man. Well, I'll put a thing there. So, In Solitude Shadow by me. It's by, if you like epic fantasy. It is very much in that kind of vein. We can't get the cover on. I'll put the cover below, and you can see it. You can see hints of it. But anyway, I'll be giving away a signed copy of that, and so we'll be doing a draw when we get to 100. So it's only going to be a small draw from 100, so you got a good chance of winning it. So subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and we'll do the giveaway next week, I think, or the week after. So that is that. So the trailer, I think we probably need to talk about that first before we talk about the Dragon Reborn. Just as a little bit of a hint to you, Katy, Chris is not enjoying the Dragon Reborn.
Oh no!
No, I don't think. No, I mean, and I don't know how much you've watched the show or Dave's talked about me, but I mean, I'm a literary scholar to begin with my main focus on fantasy literature. That's what I kind of majored in at university. Yeah. And we were kind of, well, I mean, I always knew of Robert Jordan. I started playing role-playing games at a very, very early age and read a lot of fantasy as a kid. And I was always aware of Jordan, but never really started reading it. And then when I started at uni, we had to read it. We had to read Eye of the World.
Interesting.
And I didn't, well, I mean, because it was part of the fantasy course. I mean, obviously.
Right, yeah. I guess if you're studying fantasy literature, you have to study Robert Jordan. Yeah.
And I didn't quite care for it. And I did read The Great Hunt, but I don't remember it really. But I think I was kind of jaded from reading Eye of the World. Maybe because I was forced to read it, who knows? And then I've tried to pick it up several times afterwards. I just haven't been able to get into it. And then David came with this suggestion. So I'm coming from a place where I'm a little bit ambivalent with the whole thing. I did enjoy The Great Hunt a lot, but I'm finding the Dragon Reborn to be quite dull, to be fair.
Okay.
Yeah, we've kind of gone through it in the last. To be honest, out of the first 3 as well, this is my like least favorite of the first 3. I like it more than Chris does, though.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things was when we'll get into it a little bit later on, but like when you come off The Great Hunt, which is one of the best books I think in the series, and I think a lot of people would agree. And because as well the Dragon Reborn then kind of has the same kind of, it repeats a lot of the stuff that happens in The Great Hunt.
Yeah. Some of the beats feel very familiar.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of like we're kind of the chapters we're kind of looking at today are very much ones that are kind of setting up either the ending of this book or stuff beyond this book as well. So it's kind of treading water a little bit until the ending, which is the ending of this book is great. Like it's actually although I do prefer The Great Hunt overall, I think the ending to this is better than the ending of The Great Hunt myself personally.
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing scenes in the ending of this book.
Yeah. So we'll see what Chris thinks after, but yeah. But don't be shocked when he's like going, oh, and also he hates Perrin.
Okay. That's right.
I think colours this book a lot. It's a very Perrin heavy book until.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things about this book is that Rand is hardly in it at all, and he's set up as the main character in the first 2 books. And so then you get to this book and he's hardly get any perspective from him is a bit of a change.
Just like the trailer.
Yes, just like the trailer. I actually love that though, but
yeah, me too.
So when we talked about it being a teaser, I think that's part of it. Teasing is that it doesn't outline any of the plot of the story at all, right? It just more sets up the world, the magic system, the setting, the feeling that you're going to get when you're watching the show. But I don't think it didn't give you any sort of idea to what the plot is going to be.
No, I mean, it didn't even mention the dragon
at all,
not once, and not even. I mean, I think like we talked about on here a few times that how in the book In the Eye of the World, where Robert Jordan, he sort of first sets up this little mystery of like who is the Dragon Reborn, but then very 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 firmly like lets you know that it's Rand pretty much straight up.
Right.
Like he has no real kind of he has no real desire to have this mystery continue for very long, because obviously it's all from Rand's point of view. There is like subtle hints that he's used the power, but then like he doesn't confirm it straight away, but he just leaves it there for you to gather up the pieces and everything. But with the TV show, there's a better way of hiding that if they choose to want to do that, if they want to kind of leave it as a bit of a mystery. And it was always kind of like, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But then the teaser trailer says to me that they are going to leave it a little bit as a mystery. Because as well, the problem with the book, with The Eye of the World is as well, it's like when like Moraine and Lan come to Emond's Field, and it's like, who is different? Who was born here? Who was now? And then there's like this 6'6" red-headed guy, like, hi, I'm clearly not from around here. With how diverse the casting is, it's easier to kind of look at it and go, well, people, there's a mixture of backgrounds here. So it kind of, if they want to hide who the Dragon Reborn is, they've left themselves that room to do it. I just thought it was very. I thought with the trailer, like as you say, with it wasn't talking about the story. It was kind of, because another thing is if they went with the story with like the chosen one kind of thing, people were like, yeah, I've seen this before. And what I thought they were doing was kind of like, well, these are the things that are different about, especially the book that we're covering. This is what's different about women that are ruling the world. Basically, men go evil if they use this power, and these kind of things. And it was interesting that Egwene was as much of a focus
Yes, yes, she
that
was.
Elaine was.
I've heard a lot of chatter about, Egwene's storyline, um, being very much in parallel with Rand's and being kind of she being the second main character, um, even without her being a Targaryen, which I definitely would agree, throughout the whole series, and I like that they're setting that up. We'll just have to see where exactly they go with it. But that's one of the things about the Wheel of Time is that, we're not just focusing on the men's story. We also are focusing on the women's story and their journey as heroes.
Yeah, and I think that was something that the teaser really wanted to kind of get across. Chris, you were a little bit underwhelmed by the trailer.
I was a little bit. I was very underwhelmed by it. I mean, I can understand where they're coming from. I feel that this was a trailer for the fans of Wheel of Time, not a trailer to attract fantasy viewers or other viewers. And maybe the next trailer, that comes in October, will do that. This, I don't think, did it. I've been like Katie. I've been listening to chatter, but among the fantasy community more,
right?
And especially like the Swedish fantasy community, and a little bit in the Spanish and even other places where I have some connections, and they're also they're like, man, what is it actually saying? I mean, some of them. I mean, I think the problem with the Rand characters that I think a lot of people who are fantasy interested in fantasy know that Rand is the dragon, because that is if you know one thing about Wheel of Time, that is what you know. I was kind of thinking about like the whole thing about Daredevil in the first Daredevil movie, when there was like a mystery surrounding who's Kingpin. But if you know one thing about Daredevil, you know what Kingpin looks like. So it was quite obvious who was Kingpin in the movie, even though it was supposed to be a reveal. Apart from that, no, I think it really didn't tell you anything. It didn't give you anything. I think they could have still kept some things vague, but I think they could have teased a little more to get people to like, oh, okay, this might be interesting.
Right. I think, like I said, I think they're really setting up the world rather than the story with this teaser. They kind of pulled out all the stops with, showing channeling and showing kind of everything that the show's going to feature. Monsters and epic scenery and all of that kind of stuff. So I think, they're trying to appeal to fantasy fans that way. But for a lot of fantasy fans, they're like, that's something we've kind of seen before. It's not that unique.
What I got a lot was, what I heard a lot was that a lot of people are scared of seeing something that is like what was told Dave before, the Shannara TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And even the Earthsea TV show that basically does the same thing, epic scenery, the world and everything like that, but then kind of falls flat in its delivery.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was thinking about too. And what I've also heard chatter about is that it kind of falls flat in how the characters a little bit are presented, a little bit too clean, a little bit too good looking, a little bit too pristine. Whereas I think most people can agree that what Peter Jackson did for Lord of the Rings was to show like the grittiness, the dirtiness of living in a world that is basically a medieval world.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what people are a little bit afraid of, that it's going to be catering a little bit to the, I don't want to call it the MTV set, because I don't think that kind of set really exists anymore.
Right. Yeah.
The CW Arrow set, maybe. The Riverdale, stuff like that. I think that's what people are afraid of.
I said this on the Dusty Wheel. Like, I think most of the footage, if not all of it, actually, there's probably was one shot that wasn't from the first 3 episodes, I would say, right? And that one shot is when they're riding up to the Waygate, which I think, if you've been like kind of following around and how the story is structured, that's probably going to be later on in the season, like maybe episode 6 or what have you. But I think most of the footage is going to be from, maybe not, I mean, even probably the first 2 episodes, actually.
I think it's going to be fairly early.
Yeah. And obviously with that, in the fact that the kind of, people looking a bit pristine and clean and everything, obviously a lot of the footage of the Emmons Field characters is from that setting, so it's when they're kind of being introduced and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, then in the White Tower, like people will look pristine anyway because that is just the
Yeah.
So I imagine, like, it is very much one of those things where it's like early kind of season stuff, and once it gets into it, like, I mean, if it gets to the point where they're all looking completely perfect after,
Right.
like, in episode 6 and 7 and 8, then yeah, that'd be like, oh, that's kind of weird. You want that grit and you want that grime and everything.
But where they're starting in Emmons Field, they're at their homes. They're and especially the event that starts off at the beginning of the books is something where people dress up, where they pull out their nicest clothes. They're starting from country clothes, but it's a celebration. It's a big party, and so they're going to be a little bit more dressed up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I quite liked. We can talk about what we kind of liked and maybe didn't like so much, but what I kind of quite liked a lot after watching it a lot of times is there's quite a uniformity with the Aes Sedai and the Warders, but then when you look at the actual details, the details, there's things that set them apart. So you look at like Lan, and he has that kind of Borderlands kind of background look to him. He has like the Hadori, and he has the katana that he's using. And then you look at what we believe is Peter Franzen's Warder, and he's got the dual axes. And even in the Aes Sedai as well, where they're slightly, it's the same kind of cut of dress and color if depending on what Ajar they're in. But then there's like little details that kind of set them apart.
Yeah.
Which you don't really get from like looking at, if you just watch the teaser once or twice. It's when you do watch it like hundreds of times, and you're like, oh, and obviously those kind of things you'll see them easier when it is actually the TV show.
Right. When you have more than just 2 minutes of the first 2 episodes or whatever it is. Yeah, and we'll be able to have more shots of all of the Aes Sedai and.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, positives, Chris. Positives. What things did you like?
You have to pull something out of there.
I don't. Well, I mean, no. I mean, I don't want to sound like a negative Nelly at that. I mean, for me, I mean, still, just like to say, like, I think I said that this last episode, I've been watching a lot of Apple TV, Apple Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And those people really know how to make a trailer and to make it interesting, even if you never really know what the show is about. It makes you say, like, this is something that I want to see.
Yeah.
Because there's enough here. And I think that was kind of what is lacking. There isn't enough to say. I mean, it doesn't have to be what it is about, but I mean, it doesn't seem to be like much of a super imminent threat. I mean, there's some beasts there. Would love to see a little bit more beasts. But I mean, what I did like, I like the fact that they didn't focus too much on that the dragon wasn't part of it. I mean, that it's something else that it's hinting on, because it would have been easy. It was an easy thing to do to just have like the prophecy. So I mean, I like that. I like how it was built up, and I mean, I like the setting. It looks beautiful. The world looks beautiful and stuff like that. But so that. But I mean, as a whole, as a teaser, I guess I just what I missed was it didn't pull me in. It didn't, and I think that's what a lot of people felt when they saw it. It wasn't earth shattering.
As a counterpoint to that, when you said people not really so much into it. So again, I talked about this. So Katie said this already, but so my wife, like, who I've known for 11 years, I've been trying to get her to read The Wheel of Time since pretty much probably the second date that we were on 11 years ago, right? And she has never shown an inkling into it, right? No interest whatsoever. She's not even read my book either, right? So that's how little interest she has in fantasy. Like, she's seen Lord of the Rings. She watched The Witcher. She watched Game of Thrones. That's pretty much it. I showed her the teaser like after it came out, and she watched it. And she was like, "Yeah, I'll watch that. Looks good."
Yeah.
So rather than reading the book, maybe
yeah, that's exactly. So I think, like, I think that's maybe one of the things. I think you were right, Chris, when you said it was made for a lot of Wheel of Time fans. I think it was, but I think it was also made for people that aren't fantasy fans, as if to say, look, this is a new fantasy. You know Game of Thrones, you know Lord of the Rings. This is a little bit different. But it's got stuff that you'll like in it. It's got lovely cities, it's got these people in it, and it's got like special effects. I was really surprised with the amount of channeling that was actually in.
And yeah, I was surprised that they had that too, because I think there's a risk of losing people with showing so much magic, because a lot of what you hear a lot is, I don't like to read fantasy because I don't like magic.
Yeah.
So no,
I'm sorry, I just have to roll my eyes.
But I mean, that's true.
You get some fantasy writers that say that as well. It's like, I don't like magic in my fantasy, but there's no. And it's like, well, you need to have a little bit of fantasy.
Well, and there's different kinds of fantasy, right, or kinds of magic, which I can see some people being a little irritated with magic that just kind of, is just there to pull the plot along and doesn't have any rules or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and then I think that's where a lot of people come from when they say, because they know of, I mean, they've maybe seen Lord of the Rings where stuff maybe isn't super explained, or
Harry Potter where they pull some magic in sometimes when it works for that situation, but then they don't think to use it again.
Yeah.
Oh man, the Harry Potter thing, right? You've started me off now.
Okay.
I always just thought, I've read all the books. I do like the books. I like the films to varying degrees. But I just think it's crazy, right, that you have this school of wizards, and the first thing, and they're 11 years old when they start this school, and one of the first spells that they teach them is Alohomora, which is like unlock anything. You can unlock any door, any lock. We're going to teach you 11-year-olds this spell. And it's like, what are you thinking? And then when they go and use it, they get in trouble. It's like, well, you just taught a load of 11-year-olds how to be master thieves. In what real walk of life would an 11-year-old need this spell in this school of wizardry? So there's all this kind of stuff in Harry Potter where it's just like, when you kind of just think about it a little bit,
right?
That makes no sense whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
I would definitely, if I had been to Hogwarts and then my son got his letter when he was 11, I'd be tearing it up. You're not going there, mate.
I'll just teach you what you need to know. You don't need to learn from those folks.
They've got a whole house of people that they just exclude from everything, that they try to create villains from. That's the purpose of this house, right? And then they have the brave house, and then the smart house, and then they have a house for everyone else. So it's
is that the Hufflepuff house? Is that for everybody else?
Yeah.
I'm not. I would just say that I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I don't like the books. I don't like the movies.
You're so grumpy today. You're so grumpy.
I am. Well, I mean, we're talking about things that irritate me, I guess. I'm fine with people reading Harry Potter if that's how you get introduced to fantasy literature, but please don't let that be the end-all be-all of your fantasy world.
Yeah. Well, Harry Potter is definitely, geared towards children.
Oh yeah.
That's the target audience for that.
Yeah.
So for the teaser, it's interesting, talking about who is actually the target audience for the teaser. There's definitely, I think a lot of us fans were surprised at how many things were actually in there for fans and hints and foreshadowing. I think a lot of us were very reassured by what we saw in that teaser. Just the level of production that went into it. And like I said, some of the foreshadowing and the hints of the storylines that we saw, I think a lot of that was very reassuring for most of us.
Yeah, I really appreciated seeing, because we, as fans that have been kind of tracking it, we knew that Logain's storyline was going to get expanded for a long time, and that was going to be a lot of completely new material, because in the Eye of the World, it's kind of just hinted at when they get to different, like, Padam Fane appears and goes like, there's a false dragon here and here, and then they go to another town and someone, yeah, there's a false dragon. There's a bit of battle. We think he's been captured, and then you see him in Camelin, and then that's it basically until the next book. So a lot of it was going to be new material whatsoever. It's like, how are they going to handle that and then actually mesh it with the rest of the story that's going on? And I think that was a big focus of the teaser, which was good to see, because it's kind of like, look, this is what's kind of going to happen with this storyline.
I mean, the very first scene is something that's not something that happens in the books, right?
No,
of the trailer. So they're definitely positioning it also as something new, and that we're going to see new scenes that we haven't read about before.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know for some people that's hard. If they're book purists, I am not. I look forward to some editing and some adaptations, and making it better. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, what would make you disappointed in the show if you watched the show and you said, like, no, this does not work for me, I'm going to have to leave this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to be pretty disappointed in it, just because my curiosity of where it would go, if it's a train wreck, like sometimes you can't keep your eyes away from a train wreck, right?
No,
so I think if they really change the characters, right? If they don't get their complexity, if they make them two-dimensional or one-dimensional, and if the acting falls short, that will definitely turn me off of it. I really don't think that's very likely. I'm pretty open to quite a bit of changes in the storyline, as long as we get some of those like major beats, that we're kind of expecting. I'm actually looking forward to some changes. I don't want it to be exactly like the books, because I think it would be too predictable. For me, I couldn't watch Game of Thrones until after they moved past book material.
Right.
Just so because I watched I think I watched the first season, and then to be honest, for me, Game of Thrones was also too violent, and so that might be something that throws me off. I couldn't handle like the incest and just some of that kind of stuff and the violence of Game of Thrones. But once they moved past book material and it was new and it was interesting to me because I didn't know what happened, that's when I really started tuning in every week.
That's interesting. I kind of welcome changes too, because it's kind of like you want to be surprised as a viewer. Like it's nice and comforting to like just watch the exact same thing, right? And just be like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. But then where's the excitement? And so with the stuff with Legane being more involved and maybe setting him up as a villain, an early season villain, which is kind of like what we're looking for. That's new for us, and it's kind of, well, where are they going to go with it? What's going to happen? And it's like we often talk about. I'm working on a screenplay adaptation for something at the moment for a book that I've not got any kind of vested interest in. Like, it's not something that I love or anything. It's a job basically, but it's different enough with something that I have no kind of like emotional pull with. So something like this, I would be like, wow, this is hard to do, right? But one of the best adaptations that people would always say from book to film is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But in terms of it, is it a faithful adaptation? Not really at all. Like, and especially the Two Towers, which takes huge liberties with the books. It invents a lot of different things, but it works. It's a great adaptation of the material. It's got the spirit of the books correct all the way through. It's got the characters are true to the characters for the most part, as they are.
I mean, even Lord of the Rings, some people would say that the characters aren't exactly like they are in the story, but some people might also say that's even better, that they've made them more interesting for for the movie adaptation.
Exactly. Yeah, like
It
Aragon.
added things to what the movie needed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Aragon, for example, in the books, is as soon as you meet him, he's like, "Yep, I'm going to be the king of Gondor. That's I'm happy with doing that. It's my time. I'm going to do it." And he has no real conflicts, and obviously in the movies, he has that doubt, and he doesn't want to do it originally. And it gives him an arc, which you need, like you need it in that kind of thing. So. Yeah. So, what in terms of the trailer, Katie? What were the things that you kind of what did you really enjoy seeing, and was there anything that kind of gave you a little bit of pause where you were like, not really for me, or a bit worried about this?
For me, I was just blown away. It was more than I was expecting. It was longer than I was expecting. Seeing the world that I've kind of envisioned in my head for so long, like on screen, seeing so much of it. We've gotten little production stills and things, but I was just really blown away. I was quite impressed. I thought it was even better than I could have even imagined it being. So I'm definitely hyped for it. I loved that Rand was just so happy and so smiley and like wasn't really featured. I thought like it was very obvious that they're making conscious decisions in their editing about, these characters and, knowing their storyline, right? Like, where Rand's storyline is going. And so to show him happy and smiling is definitely setting up his character for his kind of beginning. Yeah. I loved Sophie Oken. I'm not sure what her last name, but who plays Swan. Yeah. I thought she looked incredible with her tattoos and her costume. I thought it just looked amazing. There's some chatter that they maybe moved Dragonmount, which bothers me a little bit, but we'll have to see, like, once the show comes out, where exactly it's positioned. Yeah. That was the only thing that gave me a pause, was like, wait, did they actually move Dragonmount from the west side to the east side of the city? But that's nitpicky and silly, I think, to really be bothered by that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can see why people would be bothered by that. But also, I was kind of, I did notice that, but I was kind of thinking, is that just for the trailer that they've put that in, so you can see that, which we know people do that for trailers. They doing Marvel actually do that kind of stuff where they have characters that aren't even in the scene, in scenes and trailers and what have you, just to have that dynamic kind of backdrop of, you've got to show Luce Ferrin at some point, I suppose, and there he was, his first appearance.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I can see why, like, it obviously kind of changes the whole kind of dynamic a little bit of like of the AO War and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I saw a lot of people. I saw a mixed opinion about Tar Valon anyway, from people that really liked the trailer. There was quite a mix of, like, I thought the White Tower would be bigger and all this kind of stuff, but like, it isn't that tall of a structure. Like, it's Robert Jordan stated explicitly there it's about 160 feet tall in a few different places. So,
well, I think it's 600 feet tall and 300 feet wide in the book's description. I've been reading some stuff. Okay. And based on what we're seeing, the scale of the tower looks about right. What they're actually, a lot of people have been saying, is the scale of the city is smaller, like the island itself is smaller. So the tower looks larger on the island than it might. Basically, a lot of people's drawings that they make is not really accurate for how it's described in the books.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the things that, like, Lord of the Rings had going for it, was that they got two of the most famous artists of Tolkien stuff. They got to work on the movie, so it was kind of like, yeah, this is what I was expecting of this. Right. Yeah. And there isn't that kind of there isn't that real kind of go-to people for Wheel of Time yet. that kind of, which, if the TV show is successful, this will be the go-to for most people. Like in 10 years' time, if it's really successful, people, when they're reading these books, will picture the TV show.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
So,
actually, I would say that I was going to say I think the best adaptation of anything is Watchmen or V for Vendetta is actually the most accurate, but they changed V for Vendetta because it's they changed it to fit our time when it was released, the movie, compared to when the book was released. So I mean, I think that's what basically you have to look at too. You have to change source material from a sociological standpoint, because things that Robert Jordan actually was writing about, his reaction to current events, I mean, obviously aren't current events today. So I mean, you have to kind of change it that way too. You have to look at that like that too. You have to say something. It has to say something about the time in which it was produced.
Yeah, of course. And like,
what changes come from.
But yeah, that's the thing, is that I think a lot of people, because the last books came out in 2013. No, was it 2013?
Yeah, 2013.
People think of it as like modern fantasy, which in a way it is, but also Robert Jordan started writing this in the early 80s, actually. Like when the first one came out in 1990. So they're over 40 years old when he started writing it, which is a lot of things have happened in 40 years. And like his experience as what he went through, like in his life in Vietnam and all that kind of stuff, would color the perception of when he sat down to write this as well. And there is, like, not to get into spoilers, because we can't get into spoilers, unfortunately, because of Chris, because he's new to all this. But there is specific things in this series, particularly when Robert Jordan was writing it, that I'm talking more with Rand and certain relationships that Rand has, that people just would not, a wider audience just wouldn't kind of appreciate, I don't think, these days. And in an adaptation, so things have to change. It has to reflect the world that we live in at the moment as well.
And I saw that as a comment in one of the Swedish fantasy groups. It was that, like, somebody had commented, like, I hope the woke generation don't destroy us.
We've seen that a lot. We see that on Facebook.
I've seen a lot of comments about that. And I think, it's funny because for me as a longtime book reader, I think a lot of us agree that, Robert Jordan wrote these books kind of in response of some society things that he was seeing. And, he wasn't maybe explicitly commenting on it, but he was, definitely addressing men and women and the dynamic between the genders and society's roles for both men and women. And I mean, that's just part of these books. And I think as readers, we know that. And so when we see some people talking about them being woke, it's like, you have no idea what these books are about. It's pretty obvious, because if you really did, I think a lot of people would be pretty upset, just because, but they don't realize that, like, yeah, these books are set up with women in power. Like that's the basis of the books. That's how it starts.
Yeah. And as well, like, one of the big themes of it is that people of all genders and backgrounds should work together. That's one of the big themes, and like to the point where, like, the reason that Sadine is tainted is because the men went and did it on their own without the help of the women.
Right, exactly.
That's
yeah, the greatest feats of the Age of Legends happened when men and women worked together, and I think that's a major theme of this story. And it seems like the trailer's setting it up, and people just don't really get it. And once they really realize, like, how much Robert Jordan actually went there, I think they're going to be surprised, and we'll probably see a lot of pushback. But as readers, that's the thing. We know, where he was going with the story, what he was setting up, and so we can call people out on their.
Well, I mean, there are points in the book where the women are, like we've talked about, David and I have talked about it, where there's like a whole chapter where the women all are talking about Rand. Where is Rand? Why isn't Rand here? It's like, and there are points where the female characters definitely are a reflection of society at the time. And I think a lot of women that I've talked to read that, see that, don't like the books because of that, because the women seem a little bit lost at times. Maybe not, more gay and stuff like that. Not all of them, but there's like the heroine characters aren't. I mean, I think they seem a little helpless at times, even though they try to go out on their own adventure. It's kind of like I talk to my daughters about that, is like in a lot of Disney movies where the women are the lead, like for instance, Tangled or The Little Mermaid. I mean, women, but there's always a man that saves them in the end.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, and I hope that will change in the show. And I think that's probably what a lot of people maybe also say, like, well, that's woke. They changed it so that the women have a bigger role, and they're braver than they are in the books at some points and stuff like that. But we'll see. It has to reflect where we are as a society today, not what Robert Jordan saw.
Well, I think some of the things that will have to change, some of it involves the nudity. A lot of women are nude for rituals and things that the men aren't necessarily nude for. There's an awful lot of spanking. There's an awful lot of spanking, and I don't.
Not all these bits yet, but you've got this to look forward to, Chris.
It's unnecessary. I mean.
So would you rather see more nude men or less nude women in the show?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, just even.
Yeah, I think some of the rituals of women can be clothed, and some of the men can be unclothed, and that will, we just got to get a little bit of equality here.
From the teaser, it seems like we might be getting that, because there was a little random
nudity.
Yeah.
Which is
something was happening there.
Yeah, which is one of the things, like when they've aged up the Emmonsfield characters, which so you can kind of, which you can kind of put them through worse things, I suppose, as well when they're a little bit older. But there is a few things. I mean, even pertaining to this book, the Dragon Reborn and the Great Hunt. One of the big criticisms that we've had on the Dragon Reborn is that it has the girls doing the same storyline again, just repeating the storyline, where it's like, you're in the White Tower, you're being sent out to go and hunt the Blackajar, and you get captured, like, are you going into a trap? And it happens 2 books on the run. And even to a less degree, the last chapters we read last time were the ones where they get off the ship and then they blunder their way into another trap, and the Aiel have to come and rescue them, and then they go somewhere else.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing where there's other ways of doing that, of adapting that to kind of show that there is peril in the world. And I know that what Robert Jordan was trying to do there was to say that these girls, like, they may be powerful Aes Sedai or Aes Sedai in training, and they think they know a lot bit more than what they do. They're not as worldly as they think they are, which is fine. But there's another way of being like, you don't have to get captured every single time, because like Rand doesn't get captured all the time, and Matt doesn't, and Perrin doesn't, right? And it's and I think stuff like that has to change, and change for the better. I mean, and as we said, he can't. I mean, you can't avoid being, you being which is influenced by the time in which you're writing it. And this was kind of like how fantasy books were written when Robert Jordan was starting out. And obviously, he's going to be colored by that. But I mean, you can take it somewhere else. And today, that's not how fantasy is presented necessarily. So obviously, that has to change. Exactly.
People have to understand that somehow.
And it'd be boring as well. Yeah. And to answer your question from before, Chris, like what would stop me from watching it is if it was boring. That's pretty much, if it was dull. And there's enough stuff. Like we saw one of the answers that Rafe said the other day, when they were like, is it just going to cover book 1? He says there's going to be stuff from book 1. There's some stuff that's left out of book 1 that'll be in season 2, but there's stuff from book 2 and book 3 going to be in the first season. So that's more than enough to make it interesting.
More enough excitement. And I'll be happy if Logain gets a bigger part. Of course, my fantasy casting is still to have Billy Zane as a long-haired Logain. I would love that, with his shirt open, revealing his like hairy chest. Just
You
like,
love that scene. One of Chris's favorite scenes in all the book is the bit where Legaine's being carted through Camelin and he's stood there like, laughing because he says he's always like some kind of like a Lothario character. He thinks he's like, just throwing his head back and laughing and
right.
Foolishness of it all. Yes, and I have on good authority somebody let fly that Logain is, I mean, going to be returning in later books. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, Min told you with a prophecy. That
yeah.
Oh,
it wasn't Min that I wasn't referring to Min.
It wasn't Min. And so, I mean, one of the other big things about the trailer as well is obviously it's out on, if I can lean back, November 19th there.
Yes.
And we're going to get the first 3 episodes on one day. And even probably more exciting for me is that the finale is on Christmas Eve, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And we're going to have here in Sweden, we're going to have a watching party. We're going to have a party to watch it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Chris is getting flights for me to come out to watch it.
Yeah, we were just discussing, you know, how we're going to watch it and how we're going to do our watch party. It depends on what time it comes out. That's one of our main concerns actually is you know, if it comes out at midnight and then we have to watch it in the morning before we get any spoilers from anyone, or how it's going to work. So
I mean, as long as you don't put out any spoilers, I'm pretty good.
You're good. Okay. I'll have to be careful not to do too many spoilers.
It'll be 3 hours of Wheel of Time on November 19th. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, my husband said he's going to take time off work so that we can really I
think it's a Friday, isn't it? It's a Friday as well. So yes.
Yeah, and for us, it's the Friday before Thanksgiving. So I think he's going to take off like the whole week and just make it a big vacation.
Friday. So.
Yeah. So we should really start talking a little bit about the Dragon Reborn. But before we go to the chapters, because they're kind of the ones that we're covering this week are kind of short chapters that are just kind of, like I said before, they're kind of setting up the end of the book and foreshadowing the things to come. What do you feel about how do you feel about the Dragon Reborn, the book, Katy? How does it sit in your kind of rankings of books?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about it too much. You know, it's still for me, it's definitely feels like it was still part of Robert Jordan's discovery of where he was going with the story and how he was going to handle some things. You know, I think he really got the story down in the next book, in The Shadow Rising. And so this book has, like we've kind of talked about, has some beats that feel fairly familiar to The Great Hunt. And it's also very short on Rand. And it almost feels like Rand is at a place where I'm trying to think how to talk about this without getting into too much spoilers, where he's more insane than he really is.
Yeah.
You know, his insanity, his mental state is really unstable in this book. And just in the overall arc of the story, it feels like he's a little bit ahead of where he really should be.
Yeah. That's a good point. And is that something that you don't like about it? Is it kind of like, because obviously when you meet him again, that it's kind of a little bit, well, this isn't what I was led to believe.
I think it's just about pacing, you know. Of the grander story. You know, there's like 11 books after this one, right? It's setting him up for a mental state that I just don't think is quite right for the pacing of the overall story.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression, like how you're saying, that he was still kind of figuring things out when he was writing this one, and that's why you get. I mean, in the chapters we're about to kind of go through now, there's a flurry of prophecies and dreams from various different characters. that are all pretty much setting up the next couple of books. And I always get the feeling that Robert Jordan kind of just benched Rand in this one a little bit. Because it was like, well, I need you to do this at the end of this book, but I don't have anything else for you to do until that point, right? Because I don't know quite what else to do with you at the moment. So I'm just going to take...
Yeah, because I think when he first started writing them, right, he had, I think 6 books in his mind as where he was going. And of course, it ended up doubling in length, the series. So I think that's part of the reason why it just doesn't quite hit the right tone for me. I mean, it's still a great book. I still really like it. I think it's still fun. It has, this is where Matt really comes into his own.
Matt is the saving grace, I think. They're not saving grace because there is other acts, but when I ever think about this book, I always just think about the Matt storyline and the ending, and I kind of forget about everything else. I just kind of like that stuff happened at some point. I can't quite remember when, but it happened. But I remember Matt's storyline always, and the ending.
I would say that. I would say that too. For me, I mean, I think for me, the only saving grace of this book so far has been Matt. I mean, otherwise, it is quite a forgettable book. I mean, if they could have just had a book about Matt, that would have been good.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be the spin-off series, I think, at one point, wasn't it?
So, but
spoiler, but Matt.
It could have been a spin-off at any time.
Well, let's talk about that. So we're going to talk about easing the Badger. Shadow Brothers hunted Camelin, a message out of the shadow to race the shadow, following the craft, and a storm in Tyr.
So we finally get to the chapter where we got our name from.
Yes, I know. I was just gonna say, I was like, oh, this is so exciting for me to be here for you guys for easing the Badger. So I think there's multiple chapters with this name. Is that right? Do you guys?
There was one in the Great Hunt, I think, actually, or if it was
there?
The Eye of the World, I think there was one. We missed it. We talked about it, but we missed actually discussing that where our name came from.
This was the one in particular that I had in mind was Badger.
How convenient. But anyway, so basically, I think we just kind of like put like the parent chapters together, and I mean, because basically they all go into each other. They find the inn, basically Perrin and his party, if you want to call it that. Well, party, Perrin's part of it, his point of view, and Loyal is uneasy. I believe I had to take notes here because after I read it, I couldn't even remember what I read because it was so forgettable. But there's a lot of Ogier in this place, or there has been, right? And he's afraid that he's going to be taken home. That's a big part. They get into it with a few gray men again who return. A lot of gray men.
6 gray men this time. There's a lot of gray men in this book, and there are for assassins of the shadow that cannot be seen, basically, because they're so mundane yet eyes slide over them. They don't have a great hit rate.
No, they don't. They're like stormtroopers, if anything, in this one.
Right, they killed someone in the White Tower, and that's literally it. That they've just failed everywhere else they've gone.
And they win. They defeat the Grey Men, and Moraine heads out into the city alone. Am I missing anything basically in this chapter?
Not so much. It's kind of like that. That's basically there's something off in Ilion. Basically, there's everyone's having bad dreams about. Or not even bad dreams, but they're having dreams about Lord Brend, I think is calling himself. And there's like a really uneasy feeling. There's talk of war with Tyr. And then basically this chapter folds straight into the Shadow Brothers one, which is a little bit more interesting because Moraine goes off. They find evidence of a Dark Hound, which is something that Rand encountered earlier in the book in one of his like little POV bits. And then Perrin has some some dreams. He dreams about a tall man, sometimes holding his blazing sword, sometimes he's sitting on a throne. There's Dyson with Bowser on. The girls are looking at a huge metal cage and they get caught, which is just like again, it's like Frodo in Lord of the Rings. Every time he gets killed, basically, it's like, oh, not again. Like,
because doesn't he goes on into the dream on purpose, right? Or does he just dream?
I think he goes in looking for Hopper, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He wants to enter it because he wants to ask Hopper about the Dark Hounds.
Yeah, and then Hopper tells him to wake up because it's dangerous.
Yeah,
he needs to run off. And the Dark Hounds, we were talking about that before you came on, Katie. Like, here again is another threat, because I mean we get being fed threats all the time. There's new things that are scary and can hurt them, and I just hope that they reuse the Death Hound costumes from Willow in the show for the Dark Hounds.
I mean, the thing is with these two chapters, and to be honest, with the majority of the Perrin chapters in this stage of the book, they're all setting up the future books, particularly because it's all like, you know what, we've been off following these characters, but since we've been doing that, there's the Forsaken are out there and they're on the move. They have grey men, they have Dark Hounds, and then there's the hint as well that like they're not all working together, because like Moraine says that Samael, who she reveals is in charge of Ilion, didn't send the grey men, he sent the Dark Hounds, and this sort of stuff. So it's like, it's a lot of again, like how we were talking about when he was like maybe not sure what to do with Rand so much. He's kind of even in this bit, it's like there's not a lot of story in the Dragon Reborn. Like the specifics of the story is basically Rand has gone missing, but we all know he's going to Tear, and we're going to follow him.
Right.
And that's it. And so a lot of it then is going into, is working on setting up things for the future, is doing a bit more world building, specifically with the World of Dreams, which Moraine confirms that the World of Dreams and Wolf Dream is the same thing as well, doesn't she, at this point as well? In case people were wondering at this point, like, it's like, yeah, it's the same.
And then Moraine, after Perrin wakes, Moraine returns, and that's when she informs everyone that there's a Forsaken ruling Ilion, and that's what they've been sensing, basically.
Yeah, she says all the Forsaken are loose, I think, doesn't she, as well?
Yeah, which is not good stuff.
It's not really.
And then we go straight into the next chapter, which is Hunted, which basically they have to flee. Len kills a Darkhound, and they get chased by more Darkhounds on horseback. There's another chase scene, which is something that, again, we saw not that long ago.
Chase scene, but there's a new power that's used, and it's a very What Katie? What are your thoughts on Moraine's liberal use of balefire in this?
It's surprising how much she uses it, and the mystery of where she learned it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we actually ever get that resolved, but it's something.
I always thought, I mean, obviously they didn't have a lot of options, but also using like such a powerful weave when there's a Forsaken, like just down the road, that it's like, hi, we're here. But they'll fire some. Yeah. It's good as well. I like how they have this bit with the Dark Hounds and the Balefire, because obviously earlier in the book we talk about how Rand is attacked by like some kind of dog, isn't he? And he uses a beam of white, shoots out of his hand and hits it, and it disappears, and he thinks it's like a dream or something. But obviously he's been attacked by Dark Hounds too, and he's used Balefire without even knowing what it is. And this kind of like confirms that, and when you read it the second time, you're like, oh yeah, that's what he's done. But Balefire is it's a nasty little weave, which people seem to like quite a lot.
Yeah, they use quite liberally. Yeah.
And then we get a little at the end here, a little interlude at the end, or whatever you want to call it, where Matt experiments with the fireworks that he's gotten. We talked about that last time. It seems like a video game where all of a sudden he gets fireworks because he's going to have to use it later. Like you find extra lives in a room before the big boss fight. And basically what he does, he throws it on the fire, like experiments with it basically, so it blows up. And then there's some dark friends.
Which how many people have warned him not to do?
Yeah, well he doesn't care.
The first time he does it, it doesn't work. Remember,
he gets upset.
Open. Yeah, and he throws it in the fire and nothing happens, and it's like, oh.
And then there's some dark friends there as well that he has to dispatch with his quarterstaff.
He does, yeah. And then, but he throws another bit of firework into the fire and it explodes.
I do like this kind of banter between Tom and Matt.
Yeah,
as we've said before, it kind of becomes it's a little bit of a sword and sorcery style. I mean, his tale is more sword and sorcery than high fantasy, especially because of his roguish behavior and his like devil may care attitude.
Yeah, they're a really good pair, Tom and Matt.
Yeah.
Then Katy, Tom was Matt's favorite character in the Eye of the World, and he was very sad when Tom met his apparent demise.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we go into Camelin, which is basically the continuation of that. Matt and Tom, they arrive in Camelin.
Basil Gill's back.
Yes, so they talk about they're at the Queen's blessing. Is this that's later where he talked about his luck. He goes from inn to inn. But we'll get that later. Yeah. And he has
basically in this bit he wants to deliver this letter, doesn't he? And he goes in and he's turned away and goes back to the Queen's blessing, and he's like, yeah, Lord Gabriel's coming in and changed all the guards and all that kind of stuff. So he climbs over the same wall that
Rand did. Yeah.
It gets a little bit meta as well because he meets Talonvor and he's kind of like, that wall, like people keep climbing over it.
But it's interesting why they wouldn't have better security than
only these insane Two Rivers boys.
Yeah, they're just like climbing all this wall. It occurred to me though that because like the teaser trailer is pretty much like I think it's pretty much puts to bed that they're going to go anywhere near Camelin. I think it's all like that's going to be a wide berth. So this scene is going to be, if it even makes it into the TV show, is going to be very different as well, which is like, because I just want all the Matt bits from the Dragon Reborn.
Well, I know, I love them all.
Yeah, well, this becomes
I want none of the Matt bits from the Great Hunt and all of the Matt bits from the Dragon Reborn.
Well, I mean, this becomes kind of interesting because we get a little side quest, really, because Matt overhears Gabriel ordering a character named Lord Komar, to murder Elaine and Egwene and Nynaeve. So he basically has to. Now he's got a new mission after it's kind of like, again, like a video game. He drops off his letter, he gets a new mission.
Yeah. He has to go to the other side of the map.
Yes, exactly.
Who do you think Gabriel is? What do you think he's anyone in particular, or?
Well, I mean, he's got some clout. I don't know. Is it? I mean, are you hinting at that we've met him before in one of the prologues? Maybe
we may have met him. No, I don't think we have met him before. But if you kind of think of just in terms of like the last chapter where we've gone to this new city and there's a new person in charge from a certain kind of sway, did you get any of that kind of?
Well, I mean, it was, as I said, we got to put in a caveat. As I said, I've forgotten a lot about these chapters. So I don't know. But I mean, obviously, I'm thinking that he's kind of like in the same position as the Forsaken before. He's been put in a position here of power, and obviously is a dark friend. Evil.
This is one of the interesting things about the Forsaken that I hope, just to go off a little bit of a tangent, but and I hope that the TV show plays up a little bit more about how capable they are, because one of the reputations the Wheel of Time has is like the Forsaken are all bumbling idiots, right? Apart from a couple of
yeah.
And, because we only really ever see them when the other characters are interacting with them. For the most part, we do end up starting to get a little kind of asides every so often. But at this point in the story, they control huge parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
The one of them's in Tyr, one of them's in Ilion, one of them's in Camlion. There's other ones doing other things as well. So like they've only just re-emerged like in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 months. So like they're doing quite well.
I mean, it's interesting what you say is that that they're bumbling idiots, because you get the sense that none of the bad guys that we've met so far, I mean, the Trollocs, the Grey Men, I mean, none of them are especially capable as being a real threat. They seem quite easy to kill. So they're like, what are we? I mean, what's the danger here for like the everyday man here or person in the world? Even though there are a lot of threats, they seem to be fairly easy to dispatch of.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the things that like when you talk about when they're going to adapt the books, like in the end of the Eye of the World, like 2 Forsaken appear and they're easily dispatched, pretty much. There's no, and apart from the Green Man, God bless his soul.
Love him.
You do love the Green Man, and
do you love that scene?
He loves green. He just loves the Green Man.
I just want him to be in the show.
I don't think you're going to get your wish, Chris. I think he'll be on the cutting room floor. I think, but then obviously Rand goes off and meets Balsamon and defeats him, and then obviously in the end of the second book he defeats him again, and and it's one of those things where it's like you can't have like a threat that's so easily vanquished all of the time. Where they are achieving things in the world, though, like off the page, they are like taking over nations and they are doing these kind of things. And I just wonder how they're gonna increase that, because by the looks of it, there's not going to be much Forsaken presence in season 1 of the book that we know of so far. Anyway, hopefully there is a little bit.
Yeah, I think Rafe has said he's given some pretty Aes Sedai answers about the Forsaken. And basically if you know where to look, you'll see them. And some people see Forsaken everywhere. So
yes.
They might be in disguise, or we might, we'll just have to.
That's a meme waiting to be made. Taken everywhere.
Anyway,
interesting.
Yeah. Well, if we move along, Matt, he delivers the letter to Morghese, but he doesn't get the opportunity to tell him about the threat.
Yeah, which is probably a good thing, really.
Yeah. And he does have a little bit of a conflict, right, about whether he should say anything or not, and what right he has to say, or how believable he is.
Yeah.
But he
especially being Matt.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like if you were the ruler of a nation and your new advisor was next to you, and someone just came sauntering in and was like, this guy said he's going to go and kill your daughter, and I think he might be a Forsaken. You probably wouldn't get far.
No, it's not the way to get ahead in life. And he returns to the Queen's blessing and basically tells Tom what he's seen. They have to go and stop Lord Comar, find him, and that's basically what they do end up doing in the rest of their kind of
arc. Like Tom's kind of getting pulled by Matt's Taveran nature, I think, in a lot of this as well, because there's a lot of bits where Tom's like, well, I'd rather get a good night's sleep first, and Matt's doing straight away, and Tom's like, okay, I'm going to come with you, right? And he's being dragged along whether he wants to or not. And then Matt makes like a good discovery as well about how his luck works. A little bit later on, we might as well continue talking about Matt, because he arrives in Tyr quite quickly, actually. I think he's getting a bit like annoyed at this point in the series about traveling, and this is one of the things we talk about a lot, Katie, with fantasy writing, is that a lot of fantasy writing is kind of, you have like the first maybe book or 2 in a series where like people are traveling, and it's like, how do I get rid of this traveling? Is there a way?
Right. Yeah. How do I speed this up?
Yeah. So at this point, Robert Giles is like, he's arrived in Tyr. Like, he's fine. He's there. He's looking around. He thinks that he sees Rand walking down the street, which he thinks, like, that's impossible. He hears, like, people walking around on rooftops. But he's going into all these, he's looking for the girls. Tom's getting sicker and sicker because it's raining and all this kind of stuff. And then he's like, right, I'm going to just give up. And then he just goes into somewhere randomly, and there is Lord Komar. Yeah. And he realizes that his luck is random. So that's why he can never win at stones, he can never win at cards, but with dice, he's always winning.
Well, and when he first enters the city, a random lightning strikes lights up a certain building too.
It does, yeah. It does. Yeah. It does.
Well, I mean, and I think that's fun with the interaction between him and Tom, because Tom kind of guides him in all of that. That Lord Komar is playing with loaded dice. I mean, we do spend quite a bit of time. Of the chapters here, these two last chapters are definitely the longest ones and have most detail. Obviously, the one between Matt and Tom is less tedious than the other one, the other long chapter.
Are you talking about the one with the wisdom and the girls? But
exactly, where they compete for who's like knows more witchcraft or herbal remedies.
Right. Yeah. Well, that one comes before the Matt one wandering around here. So like, we might as well kind of just mention because the girls arrive in Tyr. Egwene goes into the dream world and she sees that the Black Ajar that they're hunting are all just sat in the Stone of Tyr looking at Calendar, and it's like, well, they know we're here and it's a trap. And it was like, yeah, we all know this. We know it's a trap.
They knew that a long time ago.
Yeah, and then we were introduced to a new character who is I can finally reveal this to you. So every time, Katie, that we have John What Up on here, he always goes on about saying if there was any one character that he could merge together, it would be Hurin with someone else. And this is the person, Chris. Because he's basically the same person.
Well, he doesn't consider himself the same, but that's fine.
So he's here. Is here at last because Hurin just disappears. Like he's just gone for. Yeah. I do agree with John. Actually, I think there could be a way, maybe combine the characters and have them as Julian, and just have Julian was up in Faldara for some reason.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then he goes back down to Tyr back where he lives or whatever, and he pops up again. This is who John is.
See that.
Yeah, I think because obviously, like with Hurin, like it's a big enough role, but it's like, also Perrin. We talked about this in The Great Hunt. Perrin could also serve the same function as and actually does.
Yeah.
As Hurin does as well. So it's kind of but yeah, this is the guy, Chris. You finally met him, Julian. He's a thief catcher. Yeah. He has a weird weapon because he's not allowed to carry a sword. He's
entertaining enough, I guess, as a new character. I do like a little bit of a character that has a bit of a quirk.
Yeah. A lot of quirks, Julian.
A lot of quirks. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I think. Hurin was less quirky in a way, and could do with a bit of quirks.
Yeah, I think that the Hurin's, like, apart from his talent, his kind of standout is when he becomes more and more servant-like when he's in Karaheen, when they're all like.
Right. Yeah. Poor Rand is like, please stop.
And he's like, sorry, sir. He's like, sorry, Lord. And it's like, stop it, seriously, stop it. Yeah. So they hire. So the wisdom goes to get Julian, and Julian's gonna hunt for the Black Ajar.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that plan, Chris?
It doesn't seem like it's especially well thought through, I would say, but you know what? We'll see what happens. I mean, I think a lot of things haven't been greatly thought through when it comes to the ladies in this so far. But
is that Robert Jordan, or is that the characters themselves.
The characters. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could be that Robert Jordan didn't think it through. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for him, but I mean, I think the characters in themselves maybe haven't had the greatest of plans.
Yeah.
As I've said, and I told David before, it seems like a lot of the characters in this book have a lot of, they're very naive. A lot of the times, and that's fine when they're young. But now that they're going to be aged, I mean, they're going to be older in the show. That might be an issue if they're going to be as naive.
Right. Yeah.
So hopefully they've changed them so that they're a little bit more mature.
Yeah, because
not saying that they have to be worldly at all, but I mean at least a little bit more common sense.
Yeah, because the fish out of water thing can only go so far when it's in the TV show, right? Because so when and plus as well, like with when you think of Eye of the World, where you have them chased out of the two rivers, right into Baerlon, where they've got white cloaks after them, right into Shadow Logoth, that should kind of knock that fish out of water thing out of you pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
should increase your suspicion and your caution, just a little bit.
Yes,
and then
we go back to Matt and Tom, or
back to Matt and Tom, because we left him when he was just meeting Lord Komar and his weighted dice,
and they play a dice, and Matt obviously wins 5 crowns, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Very good detail. I couldn't confirm or deny.
and they get into it. It's very Western here.
Yeah.
Also turns into the Wild West here. They get into it, and if I'm not mistaken, Matt ends up killing Komar, no?
He does. Komar goes for him with his knife, doesn't he? And Matt kills him. But then in true bad guy style, he kind of tells him, like, I didn't find the girls yet, but there's other people looking for them. Thanks for that information. Matt is great though. Like he is. This is the book where he became like my favorite character. I think it happens with most people in this book. I also think he was probably Robert Jordan's favorite character as well.
I think Robert Jordan has said that his favorite character is always the one that he's writing.
We all say that.
Yeah. But I've also, I don't know.
I think of all the characters so far in the book, he definitely has the most dimension. And maybe that's why we like him more. I mean, it still feel like Perrin is quite flat, and even the other characters are quite flat, like single-minded kind of. But we'll see. If
Matt, like everyone else is kind of has a drive in life, like whether like I want to go and do this, I want to go and do this. Perrin wants to be a loyal friend to Rand. Moraine wants to look for the Dragon Reborn, so on, so on. But Matt is kind of like, I just want to get away from everyone, but no one will let me. But then he also has this thing where he won't let himself either. Like he's very, he's very complicated in that kind of way where. You don't really see much of that in the first 2 books, but you see it in this book because there's loads of chances where like even Gabriel gives him a load of money and says go and see the world.
I thought that was kind of interesting because it's like Gabriel just gives him like a bag of money that happens to have 10 gold in it. It's like a random bag of money. And he's like, here, 10 gold. It's like, okay, so bags of money is 10 gold always.
Here's my 10 gold bag. In this other side, I have my 5 gold bags.
It was kind of like that. It was kind of funny. He was just like, here's a bag of gold.
Well, that's like that in fantasy, though, isn't it? You even see films and stuff where people just like toss like a bag to people and it has the right amount of money in there.
I think it's Louis C.K. talks about that. Is like there's always like some kind of effeminate lord is like, here's a bag of gold. This should cover horses, weapons, and 3 good men such as yourself.
Yeah, it always does. But maybe sometimes it's way more than people like. We'll just tell him that this was the right amount.
Right.
But yeah, so like Matt has he has the opportunity there to go. He has the opportunity when he gets the letters basically giving him free leave from Tar Valon. He could go anywhere he wanted to then. After his, he always has this choice where you can be like, I am done. I'm just going to go anywhere. But there's something. It's not even the Taverin pull from Rand. I think it's because at this point, I think he's quite free from Rand. I think Rand is more focused on what he wants in terms of anything else. But Matt is definitely kind of feeling that loyalty to his friends, and he wants to go and help them. He doesn't even know Rand is going to Tyr. It's just about the girls at this point.
Just the girls, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about Matt is that we start to see it in this book where, what he's thinking and what his actions are quite different.
Yes.
And so you can kind of see where he really is, just based on what he's actually doing rather than just what he's thinking about.
Exactly. So that is where we're left. We're all the characters are all either in Tyr or on the way to Tyr, and
on the cusp of Tyr.
We are left with the last 7 chapters of the Dragon Reborn.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great having you on, Katie. What's on the docket for you coming up?
Sorry, someone wants to join in.
Fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're just going to be planning our watch party for November. I'm just going to be monitoring the news. I think the big media push for the show is going to come out. My husband and I have been slowly re-listening to Wheel of Time. We listened to all of the audiobooks together. That was the only way I was able to get him into the series, was through the audiobooks. And we haven't had a real big chance, but I think we're on the Shadow Rising again. So we'll probably continue to do that and just watching and seeing what happens and waiting for the next trailer and then waiting for November 19th.
Exactly. We'll have fast. Yeah, it is, and we'll have to have you on. We'll be on to the Shadow Rising pretty soon, so you'll have to come back up. And if Chris doesn't like the Shadow Rising, then there is no hope for him.
There's no hope. No.
We'll be looking for a new co-host.
Absolutely. You can have my colleague, Victor. He can come on. You can host with him. He was so excited after the teaser.
Oh, was he?
I couldn't sleep, basically.
Oh, I love that. I love it. I've heard mostly good things from people about the teaser. So,
David, do you have anything new coming up? Anything you want to share with the group?
No. Fairly quiet at the moment. I'm again just excited for Wheel of Time. Working on sequel to Solitude Shadow, which is going slower than I hoped, but I'm getting there.
Difficult second book.
Well, this is the second book that I've written this year, and I'm kind of looking forward to doing. Next year will be the year of the third of 2 free books. The third book's here, so why do I do these things? But that is the way it is, right?
Excellent.
No good. I like the trailer a lot, and really excited. Like, we're in September. We're going. It's going to be there really, really fast. In probably 4, 5, 6 weeks, we'll be at the second trailer, and then it'll be just right around the corner. So, cool. Excited.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I have a book coming out. It's up for pre-order now. This will be coming out in March. I think we set the date for. The Soldier's Song, which is also I don't even know if it's a high fantasy or what. I don't know what you'd call it. Political intrigue fantasy, I guess.
You've made your own subgenre of fantasy for it.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what it is. But I think talk about it more when it's closer to the release date. So that and having a book coming out in December, tech noir science fiction book. Just got the okay from a songwriter to use some of his lyrics as my introduction to the book. Mark Chadwick of the Levelers spoke on Twitter, and he said, "Go for it."
I don't care.
He was like, "Whatever." So that's exciting, but it's coming out in December from Black Ink Fiction. So excited about that.
Good stuff.
And that's about it. That's all I know. Busy.
And just don't be as grumpy next time when we're on, all right? Especially when we have a guest. Don't be so
I'm not
grumpy.
grumpy. Why? I'm not grumpy, Katy.
You're-
I mean, I'm not
I
grumpy.
mean, you're not grumpy. You're just honest.
Or
Yeah. Your favorite person from the whole of Twitter of time. We got her on, and you've just been a grump. You've been a wheel of Grinch.
It's just not going to come back on now.
I'll come back. I'll come back. I
She'll block
appreciate
me
a
on
little bit
social
of grump.
media, so I don't get any news.
Yeah, block him. Yeah, block.
Yeah, block him. I wouldn't do that.
Good. Yes. I'm just being honest. This, if anything, this is a Wheel of Honesty podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Katy, and hope you'll come on again. And
Definitely.
David, what do we usually say?
Until the next turning of the wheel.